All right, here we go. Get ready to have a good time. This is exciting, isn't it?
All right, we're on. Hello, testing.
Welcome aboard the Dreamliner.
It's the only way to fly.
I've allotted 1 hour for recreational activity. There's no time for irrelevant conversation. Fun will now commence.
I've been drinking.
Gary.
Here's a young speaker who is really in demand.
Don't let that go to your head, Gary.
But wait, there's more.
Okay.
He's Gary Meyer.
For those joining us live, it's 6 o'clock Eastern Daylight Saving Time on Friday, September 4th, 2020. For a lot of you, it's 5 o'clock Central. You know, like in Chicago at the old Marshall Fields clock, at the corner of State and Randolph. But, you know, even to a fellow Chicagoan, you never want to say meet me under the Marshall Fields clock without being more specific. There's another one at State and Washington. And last time I was in town, I even found another replica at the Museum of Science and Industry. Here in my neighborhood, Disney has a clock that strikes 13. But you can only access it through a chamber with no windows and no doors, which leaves you with a chilling challenge to, no matter where you are, it's time for a digital mimosa. It's cocktail hour on the Garrforce, and time for another live edition of the Gary Meyer Show. Comments are welcome during our live show on Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, and YouTube. You can also text us at 773-888-2157. Charges may apply. Now, fasten your seatbelts. It's time to go wheels up on the Garrforce Live.
Thank you, Alan Delinka. Alan, under the weather, but still puts together a great opening there. Get well soon, Alan. This is brought to us by the premium members and Bettenhausen Automotive and Team Hochberg. David Hochberg and his team are the sponsors of this program. There's Bettenhausen's little deal there, and there's David, that handsome devil. And I want to first kick the tires and light the fires, and then it's wheels up on the Garrforce Cocktail Hour. Welcome, everybody. A lot of people checking in already. Katie from Tinley Park, Illinois, home of Bettenhausen Automotive. I saw a text from Martin from Bowen Island, British Columbia. Thank you for joining us on the Cocktail Hour. And I think we're going to have a good time, although I'm going to have to ask you to keep your seatbelts tightened when Terry Savage, the financial analyst, comes on. Terry is a financial analyst, as I just said there, and an author, and she's almost always accurate about what's going on in the economy. And I'm just afraid that we're going to hit some rough air there. So I'll put that seatbelt sign back on in just a minute. Let me say hello to Sandra and Kathy and Doggy Boy, Karen, Debbie, Ken, Bob, John. That's Johnny from Michigan there. Hey, Johnny. Hope all is well with you. Okay, Leslie, I noticed that my drink is almost gone because we start a half hour before the show talking, and I'm down to almost a couple sips.
Well, you pointed out that back in March, Terry scared you because she was so dead on.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm hoping that things are looking a little brighter. Come on, it's September. Things have got to be looking brighter.
I know. If you didn't hear when Terry was on back in March, it was right when COVID was starting to brew, and she rolled out a scenario. Really, for days after, I was just shaken down to my core because I've had Terry on a number of times, and she's always been dead on when dealing with these economic snaps. And when she said what she said, I thought, oh my God, I thought she was going to give me some good news. So we're going to look at the last 6 months and see where the next 6 months are going, because she knows these things. She studies the history of the country's economy. And she's always said, no matter how bad it looked when I talked to her, don't worry about it. In the historical overview, we always come out of these things. But we've never been through something like this in our lifetime. And she has a dinner party to go to, I believe. So I want to get her on at the beginning. And then, Leslie, you and I will talk and drink. And
there you go.
You have some stories. What do you got there?
California cab today. It's a barrel heist from Trader Joe's. And it's actually an inexpensive and really dandy little wine that they have out there. If you can get it, it goes
barrel
really
heist?
fast.
Did you say barrel heist?
Barrel heist, yes.
Oh, okay. I have a Manhattan. And
that's almost done. You got to get the crew. Where are your minions to go get you another Manhattan?
Yeah, really.
Before we're done?
Yeah, right. I'm sure my wife would like that. Honey, I'm a little low on the Manhattan. If you could just run and get me something.
Top me off, honey.
Yeah, boing. I'm doing this is the first, let me get that lined up. This is the first Bugs Bunny Band-Aid, the original one that attracted me to the Bugs Bunny, to the Band-Aids in general. When I was at a hotel in Los Angeles, I needed a Band-Aid, and I called down to the front desk, and being Los Angeles, they set up a Bugs Bunny Band-Aid. And it just made me feel good. I felt like a kid again. And then I tried to buy them for years after, and I couldn't find them. And then a listener found them online and sent me a few boxes, and then they changed the design. I like this design. Now, Ryan
Is that
from
just
Wisconsin,
kind of a black and white? It's kind of a neutral. It's a guide.
It's really the standard Bugs Bunny image.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you can see that. I don't know if you can see that very well. But then listener Ryan from Wisconsin sent me a box. Thank you, Ryan, again, of the new edition. It's that blue one. Maybe you see me wear it. It's not important to anything, but it just makes me feel good. And people ask when they see the Band-Aid, why are you wearing a Band-Aid like that? Because it's an affectation. I like it.
And it's hard to ignore your other accessory this afternoon, and that is the Garrforce pin that is on your lapel, other lapel.
Yeah, you're looking at the screen like,
or collar, whatever.
Yeah, I don't
there
know.
It is.
Let me get a shot of that. That's the Garrforce plane there, if you can see that. Yeah.
Maybe we can have those ready by Christmas. That would be cool.
So that's that. Okay. And what else do we have to do? Coming up, people have asked, and some of your relatives have asked, Leslie, and listeners, David, one of the listeners said, what is the origin of the schnauzer? Why have you attached yourself to the schnauzer? I'm going to read the joke that started off our schnauzer. There it is. There's our schnauzer with a cocktail. I'm going to give you the joke that started the whole thing off years ago and why we love the schnauzer. Get ready. Okay.
It's time.
Strap in. Get ready. We might hit some rough air here. Terry Savage is with us, and Terry has been studying the economics of this country for many, many years. She has a book out called The Savage Truth. She has a website, terrysavage.com. She answers questions on that. Terry, hello. Welcome to the party. What are you drinking?
Well, okay, I was just going to say this is the very first time in many years of being on television and radio too that I've ever thought to have a drink, even a sip, before going on the air. But the minute you suggested it, I realized that's exactly what I needed to do this show. Okay. So this is La Crema Chardonnay. That's my house Chardonnay.
Okay, I'm not as dumb as I look. The way things are going, this is standard procedure now, just to get into the day or end the day, because things are really crazy, as you know. As I mentioned, when I talked to you in March, I thought, we're starting this, whatever this pandemic is, we're starting now. I'll talk to Terry. She'll hold my hand and everybody else's hand, and I won't jump off the ledge. And at the end, when you were done, I was verklempt for days.
Well,
you painted a picture, and this was just the start of COVID that was really bleak. So now that we're 6 months in, give us a review of what you've seen, where we're going.
Well, it's been really bleak. Actually, I was kind of warning about the stock market early. I'm always early. But last fall, saying, my goodness, the market's moved up. You've had an incredible 10-year, the longest bull market ever. If you're nearing or approaching retirement, maybe you want to take some profits off the table, put them aside into what I call chicken money, a money market fund. And for young people, I've always said, just keep putting that $400 a month in your 401k plan. America, long run, it's going to be fine. But then when I started to see what was really happening in January and early February, I realized that the possibilities of America going the way that some countries in Europe, Northern Italy is where it started, where forget China, they can control things. But a Western European country like Northern Italy shutting down, I mean, people couldn't go out, couldn't go on the streets. That's when I realized the potential for a real sad situation. And of course, we did have that. But, the market bottomed out in early March, and I would have never predicted that we would be back to all-time highs by the end of August, and still have an economy where 11 million people are unemployed. Now, I want to drink. We had great news today on the unemployment numbers. We had unemployment way up in the double digits, and today the government announced, and the analysts, the street, were all saying maybe it'll be under 10%. Well, the unemployment number is 8.4%, and over the last few months, we've added back a couple $100,000 jobs every month. Today it was this last month was 1.4 million new jobs. The month before was 1.7 million. Not new jobs because the economy is growing, just people being called back to the jobs they were laid off from. So we have this really unique situation, except for some wild stuff in the market yesterday and today, with the stock market reaching new highs. Some people going back to work, but millions of people who are collecting unemployment, and much less unemployment because it ran out that $600, at the end of July. And a lot of parts of our economy in terrible shape. The airlines, entertainment, restaurants. There are a lot of sectors of the economy, retailing, unless you're online, of course, where there's a lot of pain on the part of individuals. So it's a very strange time. I think it's because the Fed said, we're going to print all the money you need. And that money has gone into the stock market, and it hasn't gone into the hands of people who are unemployed, need to pay rent, mortgages, and so forth. So that's the big picture of the economy. And it's still scary, even though today's numbers are better than most expected.
So what's going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months? I hear a lot of people talking about how things are going to shift dramatically on the night of the election. Right after the election, things are going to really open up because there is kind of a political arm to this whole thing where it might not be as bad as it seems, and some people are holding back because they want to make somebody look bad. What do you think about that?
So, yeah, I think what's really interesting now is that Congress, both political parties, I think they shouldn't get paid because they are not doing their jobs. That part is a political standoff between the Democrats, who want not only to go back to $600. By the way, the good news about jobs today takes a little steam out of the Democrats' demand that people need $600 a week additional unemployment. So there ought to be a compromise. We could talk about what the president offered, but it's just a little bit of a deal. But so there's not a lot of pressure on Congress anymore because of the good unemployment news today. But the fact that they could go on vacation twice. They went in July. In July, I said, surely they'll come up with an extension because it runs out at the end of July and they're going on vacation for 10 days. They'll do it before July 20th. Then I said, surely they'll get a deal together because it's an election year. They want to buy our votes. For sure, they're going to come up with some big deal. Both parties will agree. And no, they're off on Labor Day. So it's shocking that we're 60 days away from a major election, and they're so dysfunctional, they can't even throw money out to buy votes. That boggles the mind.
How do you go on vacation when we're going through one of the worst things, if not the worst thing in all of our lifetime?
But Gary, Congress doesn't go on vacation. Congress goes on recess. And the only two groups that get recess are kindergartners and Congress.
Oh, roasted. So what's going to happen here? How does this go on and on till now? A lot of things are canceled till next year. When does the economy become the China syndrome, no pun intended, where it melts down into the core and now we're in no man's land and we can't come back? How far can we go with this?
No, I'm not that dire. I really do believe in America and our ability to make things work despite Washington. And I think what happened in the employment numbers today and what's going on in the economy where it can is a tribute to what makes America strong. Individual businesses and workers and a lot of small businesses that are just desperately struggling to stay alive. And I ordinarily am not in favor of government handouts anywhere, but we did avoid that meltdown in spring by the quick actions of the CARES Act. A lot of that money went astray. We can have debates about that all the time. I find it inexplicable that they won't come back after Labor Day and say, all right, we'll compromise. Now, the president said he was going to authorize $400 in additional unemployment benefits. Actually, he was raiding the FEMA money, which is needed for California's wildfires and any more hurricanes. And the way that FEMA fund works, it's state and federal participation, $1 from the states, $3 from the government. So a number of states have applied. But the truth is the pool of money in there has to be a reserve for those other things, is enough only for 3 weeks. So, and by the time the states get their computers reorganized, it's not going to be anything meaningful. I say it again, I'm astounded that we will reelect any of them. I mean, this ought to be enough for America to say, we're voting you all out, no matter what party. So they're not doing their jobs.
Just board up all of Washington and start over.
You know what? Why not? I mean, they're not doing us any good right now.
Okay, well, that's not going to happen.
They were going to shut down, Gary. Guess what? Now, just guess what? Today it was announced by the vice president that both the Democrats and the Republicans have come to an agreement. The government was also going to run out of money because they couldn't pass a continuing resolution. They got their act together to agree that they'd keep the government open, but they couldn't get their act together to agree on a new stimulus round or an extension of federal benefits for unemployment. But their salaries will be paid. I think I need some wine.
There you go. And I'll have a drink too. My God. Okay. Here's the bit. They don't suffer no matter what happens. It's not where they're not going to get paid. They're not going to lose their health care. What's the downside for them while the rest of us have to go through this?
I mean, I'm shocked that more Americans aren't up in, outrage over this, because you're right. Along with all those job losses, millions of Americans lost their health insurance. That's horrible. I mean, what we're doing is we're eating away at the foundations of our society, and you can understand the resentment that's building, and that's not good for America.
My fear is November 3rd, no matter who wins, because I think of COVID as the tinderbox and the politics as the fuse that's going on. And then on November 3rd, it just goes because everybody's kind of really got this pent up anxiety and depression. And then if their guy doesn't win on November 3rd, boom, there it goes. Do you feel that?
I hope not.
I hope not too.
I've always been bullish on America, and I'm hoping that the center will hold, that common sense will hold. Right. The poet Yeats, the center cannot hold and everything's spinning off. I really think that this is going to be a critical moment in time for the future of America. I'm a student of history. You just wonder how the Roman Empire, which really was pretty sophisticated. I mean, it had all those aqueducts, it had scientists, it had, levers and wheels, and it was a really very sophisticated civilization, and it dissolved into the Dark Ages for 400 or 500 years. Really.
Right.
So it's not as if a civilization has to continue to exist. And we need to keep our American civilization together. And it's going to call for a lot of leadership. That's what's lacking terribly these days.
How do you see the holiday season now that we're coming up to Labor Day? Everything really in the past would kick in after Labor Day, heading towards the holidays. Is that a wipeout, do you think?
Well, I think, I've read some early reports that said people will buy more stuff because they aren't going anywhere. And for a while, remember that the switch in gifting and so forth was to travel and to experiences. Now, any experience you have is probably going to be in your den or your living room. So there may be more online shopping. But when you think about it, the first big holiday coming up in a few weeks is Halloween. I mean, everybody's going to eat more chocolate. I've eaten a lot more chocolate in the last 6 months. But the fact is, you're not sending your kids out trick-or-treating, even with masks on. They're not taking candy from strangers for sure this year. So the confectionery industry is all upset about that. And then we'll have Thanksgiving. And a lot of retailers have said, not that anybody's rushing into the stores because they don't want to be in a crowd, but they've said, well, we're not going to be open on Thanksgiving Day. You'll see more of that. It'll be a cover-up excuse because most shopping is going to be done online. So I don't think it'll be a total bust, but in terms of employment and in terms of some industries, and I don't think you're going out to the movies. Mulan's going to be on your computer or your screen at home. All the traditional entertainment things, every restaurant, you know how much business restaurants do in the holiday season and the private office parties? You can't go to the office, much less leave in a group together to go to a restaurant to have a great dinner. So it's really going to be different.
So what do you see here 6-7 months down the road, we get into 2021. It's all really hinging on when this vaccine comes about.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And, we derided Russia for saying that they were going to, go straight to production without finishing out their tests. Now we see there's some political pressure to do that here. It's not just having the vaccines, it's having the availability of vaccines, it's having the distribution of vaccines. But the other ingredient is having the confidence to take the vaccine. I'm no thought leader on this, but I don't want to be the first one, and I'd rather be here and not getting exposed than be the first on the list to take the vaccine.
All right. So let me do one more thing here with you. I've heard about this progressive tax that's being proposed in the state of Illinois. There's only one other state, according to your website, that's done this. Now, my point being, when we start to come out of this, the economic carnage in all of these states is going to be massive. They're going to try to make it up, obviously, by taxing people. What about this progressive tax? What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, look, this is
What
really
is it?
It's the one difference between the states and cities and the federal government is the federal government can print the money. I mean, through the Federal Reserve, they can inject, they can buy treasury securities, they can buy corporate bonds now and pay for them with newly created money put into the economy. That's what the Fed does. And the Fed just said, we're going to put all the money in necessary. We're going to buy all that stuff. We're going to write a check and give it to the bond dealers, and they're going to have money and it goes into their bank accounts. And there's liquidity in the economy. States by law have to have balanced budget. A state cannot go bankrupt under the federal bankruptcy law. Cities and municipalities, they have. But a state can't. A state is a sovereign taxing body. So the only way a state can make up its budget deficit is raising taxes or by growing. Now look, 3 of the states that have no income tax, Florida, Texas, Tennessee doesn't tax wages, it's about to not tax any income. Those are the fastest growing states with the soundest budgets, and they don't have an income tax. And their property taxes aren't outrageous either. Ask anybody who's moving from New York or Connecticut to Florida, from Chicago to Tennessee, and there are hundreds of thousands of people making that move, out of California to Texas or Nevada. Those are all states with no taxes. Raising taxes at the state level or making them more progressive. Illinois has a flat rate. They now want to make it graduated. They're calling it fair. They say it'll only be on the rich. Come on, that's what they said in 1913 when the U.S. income tax was passed. It was like the maximum was $7,000 or something like that. The fact, and it was only for rich people. And now look what it does. It takes from everybody. States are going to drop. People aren't going to leave the United States. I mean, the Beatles famously left England when the tax rates got too high. And Bjorn Borg was like the world champion tennis star, and he left Sweden. Why do you think Roger Federer lives in Dubai? Okay, because they avoid taxes. They're rich. They can leave their countries and they can have their own jets. Most people aren't going to leave the United States, but a whole lot of people are leaving California, New York, and Illinois, and more will leave if the rates go up. So I want you to know, I want to make this very clear. This is not political. Out there, take a sip of wine. Okay. Who is the biggest tax cutter of the 20th century? Biggest tax cutting president
of the 20th century?
20th century.
I'm only 38 years old. I don't know.
Okay, come on. It wasn't Ronald Reagan. Everybody says Ronald Reagan. No, it was John F. Kennedy. Kennedy cut the top personal tax rate from 90% down to 70%, and corporate rates too. And here's a quote from John F. Kennedy. By the way, if you don't remember him, you might not remember he's a Democrat, but he said, quote, paradoxically, the way to increase tax revenues is to cut tax rates. He understood that people will be willing to work, willing to be honest, not be part of the cash society if rates are reasonable. If you raise tax rates, you lose tax revenue because people do all kinds of things to avoid taxes. Mm-hmm. And in the case of a state like Illinois, which has it on the ballot this fall, if you raise tax rates, you will create an exodus out of the wealthiest people who can afford to move somewhere else and leave that burden on the middle class. This is not political on my part. It's economic. Democrats have cut taxes. Kennedy, Reagan cut taxes. The fact is, raising tax rates just drives taxpayers underground or out of the location. That's a bad idea.
All right, Terry, I appreciate it. I'll check back with you in a few months to see where we're at, but I'm feeling this was a little better than what we did in March. It feels like there is some light on this very dark tunnel.
Absolutely. I want to leave you with that. It's certainly not unreasonable to think that the market could go on and make new highs, just rush right up over 30,000. And that's good for you if you have a 401k plan at work. But this is not about trying to beat the market. It's about being invested in the market, because over the long run, let me just leave you with this thought. There's never been a 20-year period, going back to 1926, no 20-year period where you would have lost money in a diversified portfolio of large company American stocks with dividends reinvested. And that's even adjusted for inflation. So take 29 to 49, 52 to 72, no 20-year losing period. So if you're out there and you're going, oh, what should I do now? You should continue your pattern of regular investing, because we live in America. We're going to make America work. We have some rough times ahead of us. And with all this money around, that's a good argument that stocks could go higher. The real responsibility of all of us is not to try and beat the market. Just being the market will be fine. It'll be fine because America will be fine. The real challenge in front of all of us now is not to spread out on the edges, not to go to the extremes, to be leaders for our elected representatives and showing them we demand people who will compromise for progress, as opposed to stand on the edges in this tug of war and pull America apart. I know it sounds like a soapbox, but I think we have 60 days now to say, do not try and divide us. Find candidates all up and down the ladder who are sensible about trying to bring us together. Savage
Terry,
truth.
Cheers.
Cheers to you.
Thank you, Terry Savage. Appreciate it. Always enlightening. Have a good Labor Day weekend. As I talk Swedish. Maybe Sweden is where I should go. Okay, Leslie, I hope that was somewhat comforting.
I'm feeling better. I mean, it's nice to have a grown-up in the room, if nothing else, because sometimes we forget that they're out there, and we're not going to fall apart if we don't let ourselves.
Yeah, she said in those 20-year segments, no matter where you start, and it went through some of the worst economic times in those 20 years in all of those different frames, it always came out where you were okay. Got to go with history.
You wouldn't know that looking at my checkbook right now, but
exactly. What here's the deal. What else can we do?
We're still doing better than a lot of people.
What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Move to another country?
Although I got to tell you, that Tennessee thing is looking sweeter and sweeter. Rolling hills.
Right. Well, that's not another country. And she mentioned these states that don't have state income taxes are really blossoming, while the states that tax the bejesus out of you they're suffering. How can you not figure that out?
Huh? Especially though, it's coming from people who. There we go.
All right, there it is. Oh, glory,
America.
Mm-hmm.
Cheers.
Heading down to San Francisco for the Labor Day weekend show. I got my
Labor Day weekend. Holy shnikes! When you're COVIDed at home all the time.
You don't know. You forget. This is the latest Labor Day can be, right?
Oh,
it's
is it?
The first Monday in September. This is where it's the latest it can ever be. The 7th.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Hurry in now for the Labor Day sales event and lease a new 2020 Jeep Renegade for only $159 per month. Your best, no hassle, and no haggle Jeep buying experience starts now at BettenhausenCDJR.com.
When I said Labor Day, that triggered the Bettenhausen commercial. And I want to mention that if you need a mortgage or a refi, David Hochberg and his team, they're the people to go to. The rates are low, and David is hiring. His business is booming. And he needs people that do this kind of work. So if you're in that kind of work, call David and see if you can get a job with David, if you've been laid off or whatever. And if you need a refi, what are the rates? About 3% around there, very low. And they will do their best to get you whatever you need. If you would just want the free consultation and at the end of that go, I'm still not comfortable, that's fine. He won't hassle you if you just do that. That's what he does. He's so good. David Hochberg and his team. All right. Are you ready for some schnauzer?
Schnauzer. Okay. So, yes. When did we start this? About 4 years ago, right? Was when you first told the joke?
It's longer than that. A listener sent me this, and I read it on a radio station, which was pushing the boundaries, I'm sure, of what you could do on radio, but nobody can stop you doing any kind of shit on the internet. By the way, speaking of shit, I have a new blog posting. I have a new blog posting, and the theme is Earth might be a total shithole in the galaxy. And I know you're, oh my God, he's throwing the whole planet under the bus. Not the bees. I have evidence now that we have to look at where this could be the shithole of the universe, this planet. Read it, and then we'll talk. Here it is. My neighbor found out that her dog, a schnauzer, could hardly hear, so she took it to the veterinarian. The vet found that the problem was hair in the dog's ears. That happens with dogs if you have a dog. He cleaned both ears, and the dog could then hear fine. The vet then proceeded to tell the lady that if she wanted to keep this from happening, she should go to the pharmacist, and get some Nair, hair remover, and rub it in the dog's ears once a month. The lady went to the pharmacist, bought some Nair. At the register, the pharmacist told her, if you're going to use this under your arms, don't use deodorant for a few days. The lady said, I'm not using it under my arms. The pharmacist said, if you're using it on your legs, don't shave for a couple of days. The lady replied, I'm not using it on my legs either. If you must know, I'm using it on my schnauzer. The pharmacist says, well, stay off your bicycle for about a week.
Boom, boom.
There it is.
And that's it.
And that was when we became enamored with the schnauzer. And that's why we enjoy the schnauzer altogether.
Is it just me? But it seems like the art of joke telling is fallen by the wayside. Somebody was brought up, what's your favorite joke? And you know what? Aside from the schnauzer, I couldn't come up with one.
I know I don't tell jokes, but you're right. A real good one is fantastic. And I'm going to name drop here, and I don't mean to, but I was so enamored that this happened. I was so excited that I got to have dinner with Michael Douglas in Hawaii, no less. And it's a whole thing, but it happened, and we're sitting at the table.
Was this before the sex addiction? Was it after the sex addiction?
Well, here's the bit. He was in Hawaii because his wife had kicked him out because the sex addiction was brewing. And had a friend in Hawaii who had a place, and the friend told him, go stay at my place to get away from this.
Got it.
But I'll tell you what, Leslie, we're sitting at this table, and women were throwing themselves at this guy. This was right before he won the Oscar for Wall Street.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, my God, yeah.
It was bizarre. I had never seen anything like that up close. And they were just, every woman in the place was coming up to him, and they knew he was married. They didn't care. And I guess he, at some point, had a little issue with it. He could not have been a nicer guy, though. So then he proceeded to tell this joke that, remember who George Burns is? Remember
Absolutely.
Him? Yeah.
Cigar smoking centenarian, yes.
Right, exactly. He told Michael this joke. George goes to the doctor for a full physical. The doctor says, I need a blood, a urine, and a stool sample. And George Burns said, just take my underwear. Okay.
And it's that simple.
That's what I mean. I like those kinds of jokes because I can remember those. Other jokes, I don't know jokes.
It always was like an uncle or somebody like that who you'd bring up a topic about, coffee, and I got a story for you about a man and a cup of coffee, and I miss that stuff.
It's an art. It really is, and you're right. It's not there anymore. These stand-up comedians, they usually don't do jokes. They do other lifestyle building into something, and that's the way it is. But back in the day, it was jokes. I love a good joke like that. All right. You have some batches here. Let's get into those. Let's talk about what you found.
Well, first and foremost, look for more changes to the Taco Bell menu this fall. This week, Yum Brands announced that they are cutting 3 key items following a review of the costs and profits in this pandemic year. First off, Mexican pizza is on the way out. The company points out that one consideration is packaging. Pizzas alone produce some 7 million pounds of paperboard waste in a given year, and that by eliminating those pizzas, they'll be much closer to achieving the sustainability goals that they've set. Also out, shredded chicken and pico de gallo.
Oh, God. Okay.
When was the last time you ate at a Taco Bell, Gary?
I loved Taco Bell when they first came out because you couldn't really get Mexican back in the day of that any caliber. And that was the go-to place. And my then girlfriend and I, we would look for Taco Bells that were miles away and actually make pilgrimages to Taco Bell. I know it sounds silly today when you have Chipotle and all these other places. I guess I go more to Chipotle if I want Mexican.
Or you have the option of going to a Mexican restaurant.
Or a Mexican restaurant. Boom. How about that? I'm so American.
And there's nothing wrong with that, we find out. Meanwhile, a 21-year-old Georgia man is under arrest after authorities say he impersonated a teenager for his own gain. Abe Holmes is accused of giving false information and a false name to deputies. It all began last week when a woman in Baldwin County took in Mr. Holmes after he told her that he was 14 years old, homeless, with no living relatives. She gave him a place to sleep, fed him, bought him clothes, and even enrolled him in the local high school. But then the two had a falling out. Deputies were called when things turned physical. Holmes at that point gave off, quickly fell apart when they ran his fingerprints. Police say he never actually attended school, so don't worry, but he was issued a school laptop, which has subsequently been returned.
I guess it's admirable that somebody takes a homeless person in, but you got to be a little careful here. Have you heard this story where this couple went to buy a car? Was it off eBay? It was one of the internet selling places. They go to meet this guy, and the guy says, "Oh, I brought the wrong car. Can you come back?" Or the wrong title. "Can you come back to my apartment?" And then he robs and murders both of them.
Yeah. Well, we had a case where a father and son went to pick up a gaming system, and same thing, it ended tragically. Isn't that why they have like those spots outside police stations where you can?
I would meet somebody at the police station. I can't trust anybody, but this woman just takes this guy who's 21 and says he's 14 and gets him in school, and it unravels from there.
It was like 21 Jump Street, except with bad guys.
Yeah. Okay.
And finally, police in Germany are still trying to figure out who is responsible for several vials of hamster DNA that were left on a passenger train in Heidelberg last week. Police sent the bomb squad in when a conductor discovered a styrofoam box containing 3 vials of an unknown liquid. The box was taken to a lab where forensic specialists determined that the substance in question was hamster DNA. So far, no one has come forward to claim it.
Okay, it's hamster DNA and it's liquid. I don't want to know what they did to the hamster to get that in a vial.
You have to have very tiny
hand to get that DNA. Hey, have you seen, we have seen it, and I'm just saying this kind of in general, the girl who got caught in the kite and was pulled up into the air?
Okay, so the video was out of Asia. Oh, yay. So at least we got
there. We have a still photo. We don't show videos because copyrights and everything were getting to be a hassle. But there she is. She got caught in this kite and was dragged up into the air. And there's a spaceman type thing next to her. That's a kite. Yeah, there it is. Can you believe this?
Easily 80 to 100 feet in the air, spinning and
she landed safely.
That's what makes this video fun.
Have you seen the video of David Blaine with the balloons?
Okay, so this was a YouTube-only event, and it was at like a weird time, 10 o'clock in the morning on what, Wednesday or something?
Mm-hmm.
No, I haven't. And it was out over the desert.
Right. He hooked himself to a bunch of these helium balloons and went up, I believe, about 24,000 feet. And then he slipped on a parachute and came down. I don't know how he did that. exactly, because it said he put the parachute on when he was up in the air, which I don't know how you do that if you're holding onto the balloons. But it kind of got sideswiped by this girl who just went up in a kite tail. Here's David Blaine. For months, he's rehearsing and practicing and going through all this. This girl goes up 800 feet in a kite. No big deal. Yeah. That kind of took the steam out of David Blaine a little bit.
So he's alive, right? So we didn't lose Dave.
Right.
Oh,
no,
good.
not this
Thank
time.
God. He's an American treasure.
Do you have more stuff?
I do, as a matter of fact. Ken Jennings here is headed back to the set of Jeopardy! And it's got people wondering if it isn't positioning to take over for Alex Trebek. Jennings, the greatest Jeopardy! Player of all time, is joining the show as a consulting producer when the show returns on September 14th. His duties will include, but aren't limited to, presenting video categories, contestant outreach, and new project development. And while Alex Trebek appears well enough to resume hosting, insiders indicate that the hiring of Jennings does seem to indicate that he is the heir apparent for a time when Trebek will no longer be able to work. Alex Trebek, as you may or may not know, is still fighting pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, he's going to be the new host. I mean, come on. It's a natural. People know him, obviously, from winning so much. And it's just an easy thing. He'll be a perfect transition from Alex. And we don't know where Alex is as far as his health, right now?
He's been through treatment. He's had ups, he's had downs. And I think we'll all be watching on September 14th to see his color and everything like we have in the past.
So that's when new shows start.
Yep. So.
And that's without an audience, I would assume.
And are they going to have to socially distance the contestants too?
They might have to keep those shields from Final Jeopardy up all the time.
There you go. Police in North Carolina are looking for a man they say set himself on fire while trying to torch a car outside a convenience store. Charlotte police detectives say the suspect, Michael Bumpers, a man they've taken to calling Smokey, was caught on surveillance video setting fire to the victim's car when the victim denied his request for a tire jack. There was no altercation, just Mr. Bumpers proceeding to pour accelerant on the car and lighting it up, and in the process, lighting himself up as well. He hasn't shown up at any hospitals yet, and anyone with information regarding his whereabouts is being asked to call police.
There's kind of a name theory here. His name is Bumpers. I like that. And he sets the car on fire. Bumpers, okay.
You're welcome. That I saw that and thought you might notice. And it wasn't exactly hard to find, but police in Nottingham were able to quickly track down a stolen vehicle yesterday. That's because the vehicle in question was a large pink ice cream truck covered in cartoon characters and the words "Super Whippy." Just 20 minutes after it was reported missing, police spotted the truck and attempted to pull it over. The driver refused and a brief chase ensued. The ice cream truck was eventually boxed in and a 22-year-old man was taken into custody, says one of the officers involved. Although it's a comical tale, this is someone's livelihood, and a crime like this could have a devastating impact.
Think of the visual here, the Super Whippy truck surrounded by police. Strange times.
I want to have the music playing all that time too, like Turkey in the Straw or something.
Yeah, or Yakety Sax.
Yeah, that would be better.
All right, one more?
No, that's it. I'm sorry.
That's it?
That's all you got.
Good. That's good. For a
no more news
show.
for you.
We'll do some more on Monday. What about that?
That sounds like a deal.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay, John, Wendy. Hey, Wendy, how are you doing? Sandra, Janice, Debbie, Anthony, all check it in. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great Labor Day weekend. We are working on Labor Day. We work all the time here on the Garrforce. Thank you. Hope you have a great weekend. And it is time for that complimentary cannoli coming down the aisle. There it is. Looks nice. And it is time for a long weekend schnauzer recommendation.
And in honor of our guest, Terry Savage, I say invest in your schnauzer.
Can't beat that. There's our little schnauzer. 3 of the green, gears down, flaps are down. We're flying dirty. I'm going to go start the 3rd season of Ozark.
Cool.
Yeah, great show.
Can't wait.
The Garrforce has landed.